discovered my stepson engaged with his. Thus, I assisted him in an authentic tale of betrayal. Upon finding my stepson immersed in play within the confines of his bedroom, I made the decision to lend him my assistance. A moment that transformed into a thrilling adventure, one I could never have foreseen. It all began on a serene Sunday afternoon, marked by an eerie calmness and a comforting sense of familiarity that enveloped the home. I had dedicated the majority of the day to the art of tidying up, engaging in the minutiae of daily tasks to occupy my thoughts. The house felt largely vacant. My husband had embarked on an unplanned fishing excursion with friends. The weekend departed with an air of unusual tranquility. Kyle found himself in the solitude of his upstairs room. The soft thrum of his music wafted down to where I lingered in the kitchen. It was a rare occasion for us to have the house to ourselves, yet the rapport between Kyle and me had always felt effortless. Kyle was 22. He bore himself with a confidence that was a testament to his years. There existed within him a quiet demeanor that would occasionally surface in surprising instances throughout the years. I had grown to value the subtle connection that existed between us. It lacked volume and spectacle, yet it remained a constant source of solace after the dishes were done. I filled a glass with chilled tea and positioned myself by the kitchen window. The gentle embrace of sunlight enveloped me, yet the stillness felt anything but soothing. Yet, an unquenchable energy surged within me. The sensation coursed through me, rendering stillness an impossible feat. After a brief pause, I resolved to delve into Kyle's music. The music continued to play softly in the background. As he ascended the final steps, he found the door to his bedroom slightly open, allowing the sounds within to drift into the hallway. I took a moment to reflect. I pondered the choice between knocking or allowing him to remain undisturbed. Yet, an unquenchable thirst for knowledge urged me to draw near. As I approached, ready to call out to him, the sight through the small opening stopped me in my tracks. Kyle sat on the edge of his bed, exuding a calm yet focused presence, his hands moving with intention. His actions eluded my immediate understanding, as his gaze stayed fixed downward. A slight furrow of concentration etched across his forehead. My breath hitched as I realized his intentions. The closeness of the moment unfolding before me urged me to look away. I bestowed upon him the solitude he clearly thought was his to claim. Yet I found myself frozen, captivated by a peculiar mix of wonder and curiosity. The fragility of the moment, intertwined with Kyle's seeming detachment from the surrounding reality, held me in thrall. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the afternoon sun, creating delicate shadows that highlighted the lines of his face and the arch of his shoulders. I realized I should not be watching him, yet the image of him so bare and genuine stirred a deep curiosity inside me, an unspoken question I could not ignore. Just as I was beginning to gather my thoughts, Kyle looked up, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that held me captive. Through the slender crevice of the door, time seemed to stand still. His expression shifted from astonishment to a tangled blend of embarrassment and doubt. His hands stilled, and for a fleeting instant, we remained motionless, caught in a collective silence that felt endless. I endeavored to express a thought, any thought, to ease the mounting tension, yet the words slipped through my grasp. My heart pounded fiercely within my chest, a tumultuous cadence echoing in my ears. Kyle was the first to extend his hand toward a nearby blanket, draping it over himself for warmth. His cheeks bloomed with a rich crimson hue. "I didn't think you'd come upstairs," he mumbled, his voice low and heavy with embarrassment. I regretfully exclaimed, unwittingly sealing my own destiny. As I stepped back from the door, a searing sensation washed over me. It happened without my intention, and I found myself lacking the right words to express it. He stumbled out in a hurry, yet Kyle lifted his hand softly as if to pause me. "It's fine," he replied. His words rushed, yet a tremor betrayed his composure. "Kindly grant me a moment." I nodded and made my way back down the corridor to the top of the stairs, my mind swirling in a tumult of confusion. I found myself regretting the decision to remain and observe, yet the image of Kyle stood there, utterly exposed and defenseless. Forever imprinted in my mind, I stood there, my hands gripping the banister as I struggled to steady my breath. A multitude of thoughts flooded my mind, each one more bewildering than the previous. I had never seen Kyle in such a condition, not just in his looks, but also in his emotional state. His expression held a depth that struck a chord deep within me. Something indescribable, yet utterly impossible to overlook. Unbeknownst to me then, it had set in motion a series of events that would eventually lead to something thrilling. The creaking of Kyle's door pulled me abruptly from my thoughts. He stepped into the hallway. His movements were cautious. He averted his gaze from me. He had slipped into a t-shirt and shorts, his usual laid-back clothing. His flushed cheeks and the palpable tension in his demeanor betrayed his discomfort. "I sincerely apologize for that," he declared. His voice carried a quiet weight as he rested against the doorframe. "It was never my intention for you to see that. It is satisfactory," I replied swiftly, my tone gentler than normal. "I ought not to have. I failed to consider the implications." He nodded, his gaze flickering to mine for a fleeting moment before it shifted away once more. "I suppose we are even now," he remarked, a faint, nervous chuckle escaping his lips. "Is it possible?" I asked, tilting my head in bewilderment. He shrugged, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You entered unexpectedly, and I stumbled upon you. Do you recall last summer when you forgot to secure the bathroom door?" The recollection hit me unexpectedly, causing my cheeks to flush once more. The incident had completely slipped my mind, the transient awkwardness we had brushed aside in that moment. "I suppose you are right," I responded, laughter escaping my lips. Yet my voice carried a hint of unease. "We stand on equal ground." The tension that had hung between us began to ease, if only a little. The collective memory acted as a link, easing the tension of the moment and rekindling the effortless closeness we had always cherished. Yet even in the midst of our laughter, I found I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us. A subtle tension simmered just below the surface, yearning for acknowledgement. The laughter faded away, giving way to a deep silence that was unlike anything that had come before. Kyle rested against the doorframe. His arms rested nonchalantly across his chest, yet his stance radiated a subtle tension beneath the surface. Unsure of how to react, I momentarily considered retreating, descending to grant him the room I had clearly intruded upon. Yet, the way his gaze flickered in my direction, a blend of hesitation and curiosity, held me in place. It wasn't exactly discomfort. There was a softness, a hint of fragility that drew me to stay. At last, I found the courage to ask, my tone more gentle than I had meant it to be, "Would you like to engage in a discussion?" Kyle's eyes grew a fraction wider. His cheeks flushed as he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "What exactly are we discussing?" he inquired. His voice carried a hint of anxious wit. I managed a subtle smile, wishing to ease the palpable tension in the air. "Concerning any topic. If you choose not to, that's perfectly fine. However, I thought it might offer some comfort." He paused, his eyes drifting to the ground as he ran his fingers along the nape of his neck. After a brief pause, he admitted his uncertainty. "It carries a certain sense of humiliation." I moved forward with care. My movements were deliberate, akin to the careful approach one might take with a skittish animal. "Kyle, feeling embarrassed is perfectly normal. Each individual encounters such instances." His lips curved into a faint self-mocking smile. "Not all are unveiled by their stepmother." The way he expressed this, part playful and part sheepish, drew a gentle laugh from me. To my surprise, his smile widened just a bit in response. "I suppose that is not the case." I recognized my tendency, across from the wall, to mirror his stance. "Nevertheless, if it offers comfort, I have also encountered a multitude of uncomfortable instances. One is never truly solitary." Kyle looked at me, his demeanor becoming gentler. "Indeed, however, your demeanor exudes a remarkable sense of composure, suggesting that you possess an unwavering grip on every situation." The comment caught me off guard, stirring a profound ache within me. "I am not as composed as you think," I replied, my voice now softened. "Have faith in me. Throughout my journey, I have encountered my fair share of moments steeped in uncertainty." He examined me closely for a brief moment. His brow furrowed slightly as he tried to align his perception of me with the person standing before him. "It is indeed quite strange," he finally observed. His tone carried a hint of introspection. "Your differences from Dad are striking. Not in a negative way. Simply unique." Uncertainty clouded my thoughts as I pondered my response. As a result, I chose a gentler option, which can prove advantageous on occasion. Kyle nodded, yet his expression lingered in thoughtful reflection. Indeed, he responded after a moment's hesitation. The silence that lay between us resurfaced. Yet, on this occasion it seemed to carry a sense of buoyancy. I noticed the tension in Kyle's shoulders easing and the faint lines of worry around his eyes relaxing as he leaned back against the doorframe. He expressed his regret for your having to witness that, remarking afterward. For a brief instant, his tone took on a more serious quality. I was not genuinely reflecting. I seemed to have missed the detail that you were at home. I acquiesced, affirming that it was indeed acceptable. I quickly endeavored to calm his concerns, assuring him that it was not a matter of great importance. I simply sought to guarantee his welfare. Kyle inclined his head in agreement, yet, he persistently avoided my eyes, insisting, "Indeed, I'm fine." Expressing my thoughts proves to be quite a challenge. I tilted my head ever so slightly, my curiosity intensified. Conveying his hesitation proved challenging as his fingers nervously toyed with the hem of his shirt. Interacting with others presents a challenge for me. At times, I sense a duty to adhere to a particular standard, and when I stray from it, I am engulfed by a feeling of transgression. His words resonated with me more deeply than I had expected, stirring a wave of empathy within me for him. "Kyle," I said softly, moving in closer, "embrace the essence of who you are, without the need for pretense. There is no obligation to meet the expectations of others, neither my own nor your father's, nor that of anyone else." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with wonder and inquiry. In that brief instant, I caught a glimpse of the fragility he usually kept hidden away. "Do you truly believe that?" he asked. I replied with unwavering determination. "You possess a commendable character, Kyle. There is no need for you to prove anything to anyone." A gentle smile played at the corners of his mouth. I noted the tension in his posture continuing to fade away. "Thank you," he murmured gently. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "It was my pleasure," I replied in my unique style. We lingered in silence for just a moment more. The silence that envelopes us has taken on a nearly friendly quality. The faint traces of a smile lingered on Kyle's lips. A wave of relief washed over me as I noticed his apparent improvement. Yet, even as the tension began to dissipate, a palpable shift lingered in the air, an undeniable sense that the dynamics between us had transformed. His gaze lingered just a moment too long, making my heart race in a way that defies explanation. In the end, Kyle lifted himself and moved away. The doorframe released a quiet exhale. I must take action. He conveyed a sense of productivity. His tone was light and cheerful, but tinged with a hint of doubt. "Take your time," I responded, a subtle smile gracing my lips. "There is no urgency to hurry." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. Our gazes met for a fleeting moment before he withdrew into his sanctuary. He felt the door close softly behind him. I paused for a brief moment. As I stared at the closed door, a peculiar blend of emotions began to swirl inside me. I found it challenging to accurately pinpoint my feelings. Maybe a sense of bewilderment or an urge to explore. Yet, I was convinced that my bond with Kyle would transform beyond recognition. The rest of the afternoon drifted into an extraordinary fog. In my efforts to engage with trivial pursuits, tasks like folding laundry and sorting mail, endeavoring to redirect my mind away from the occurrence in the corridor. Yet, despite my endeavors, the memory of Kyle's expression and the fragility within it lingered. His voice lingered in my thoughts, an unyielding specter that refused to fade. I comforted myself with the thought that this was just a fleeting instance of discomfort that we would both navigate through. Yet, the more I endeavored to convince myself, the more my conviction waned. His gaze held a certain intensity that captivated me. Thus it is revealed, so vulnerable, that evoked deep feelings within me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, emotionally drained, I sank into the couch, a book in hand, yearning to lose myself in a world of imagination, seeking refuge from the chaos of my mind. Nevertheless, the letters on the page melded into a hazy amalgamation. My gaze continually wandered to the shut door at the summit of the staircase. The echo of footsteps shattered my daydream. As I raised my gaze, I caught sight of Kyle making his way down the stairs. His hair seemed a touch unruly, as though he had been resting in bed. He radiated a palpable sense of doubt that tightened around my heart. His voice was a gentle whisper, halting at the foot of the staircase, and spoke. I had intended to brew a cup of tea. I was taken aback by the straightforwardness of the question, a swift nod, preventing the onset of overthinking. That would be delightful. My sincere gratitude to you. Kyle stepped into the kitchen. Following a moment of uncertainty, I pursued, drawn irresistibly to the magnetism of his being. As one steps into the room, I discovered him in the act of filling the kettle. His movements were serene and intentional. The gentle murmur of the boiling water filled the air. The soft chime of cups echoed gently as he set them down on the counter. Do you still enjoy honey in yours? He asked. He cast a quick glance over his shoulder in my direction. Indeed, kindly, I replied. Resting against the counter, I watched him intently. His tone carried a relaxed air. Yet I found myself captivated by the subtle precision in his movements. As though he were trying to divert his own attention, a moment of silence enveloped us. The space that separated us was filled only by the gentle whistle of the kettle. I aimed to express something that might ease the ongoing tension that had filled the air since earlier. Nevertheless, the words slipped through my fingers. As the tea was being prepared, Kyle offered me a mug. His figure relaxed as he leaned against the counter opposite me. He savored a delicate sip. His gaze locked onto the wisps of steam rising gracefully from the cup. Your remarks have been occupying my thoughts, he declared. At last he found his voice. His voice was steady, a blend of tranquility and authority. I inclined my head ever so slightly, looking forward to his detailed exploration of the idea of freeing oneself from the burden of others' expectations. He pressed on. He conveyed the extent of his dedication to aligning himself with the wishes of others, that he had become blind to his own dreams. His words resonated deeply within me, encouraging me to place my mug down with care. Fear that my shaking hands could betray the chaos within me. Kyle spoke softly. It is perfectly fine to embrace your emotions. This method enables you to persist in your quest for possibilities. Feeling uncertain is a common experience. It is not necessary to have all the answers at once. He comprehended, slowly permitting his eyes to meet mine. Yet it was expressed. What if I feel hesitant about uncovering the truth? Should I find myself discontent with my findings? The raw honesty in his voice tightened my throat. I took a deep breath before responding. It is perfectly normal to experience fear, I remarked. My voice trembled ever so slightly. Nevertheless, your strength surpasses what you truly comprehend. There is no necessity to face all challenges at once. Advance step by step, trusting that you will find your way. Kyle's lips curved into a delicate smile, even though it failed to completely strike a chord with him. Your presentation exuded an air of ease. It is not so. I recognized that my smile bore a hint of sadness. Nevertheless, you are not alone. I exist in this moment. To you. For a fleeting moment, he simply regarded me, his gaze unwavering. The fragility in his expression was nearly overwhelming, and I experienced a profound sensation, a peculiar tug in my chest, a pang of discomfort. Thank you. The last he spoke, his voice hovered just above a whisper. No need for gratitude. I responded gently, my voice barely above a whisper. That's what family is for. Kyle nodded. However, his countenance lingered in contemplation. It seemed as if he had more to express, so I offered him the opportunity to share his thoughts. Yet that moment slipped away. He lifted his cup once more, savoring another sip of his tea. The stillness that lingered between us held a certain ease. Yet, it bore the weight of unvoiced thoughts and feelings that neither of us appeared prepared to confront. I felt compelled to extend a gesture of reassurance to him, yet I found myself uncertain about what he truly required, or if he possessed any awareness of it himself. At long last, Kyle lifted himself upright and placed his mug upon the counter. I believe it's time for me to retire for the night, he uttered. His tone was buoyant, yet laced with a hint of uncertainty. Very well, I declared, my voice softer than I had hoped. Wishing you a peaceful night, Kyle. Wishing you a peaceful night, he responded. His gaze held on me for a fleeting moment longer before he turned and vanished up the stairs. I lingered in the kitchen long after he had departed, lost in my thoughts, a labyrinth of confusion and yearning. The burden of the day bore heavily upon me. As I ascended the stairs to my room, a peculiar blend of emotions washed over me. Worry, tenderness, and an elusive depth I struggled to define. I couldn't dispel the sense that this marked merely the inception of a change, an unvoiced yet unmistakable shift between Kyle and me. Yet, despite my efforts to dismiss it, I understood that it would only intensify as time passed. Yet the tale was far from over. No, the climax was approaching. Allow me to share something with you. Silence enveloped the house once more, yet it felt distinct this time. The air appeared denser. It was as though the silent exchanges shared between Kyle and me had permeated the very fabric of the walls. As I recline in bed, my gaze drifts to the ceiling, while the gentle whisper of the trees outside fills the air. The restless energy within me surged, my thoughts incessantly returning to Kyle. His countenance, the fragility in his tone, how his gaze had held on to mine. Only a heartbeat too extended. Something lingered in the air, a thought that eluded my ability to articulate. Yet it was inescapable, and I turned onto my side. As I closed my eyes, I found myself in a futile struggle to summon sleep, yet the silence only magnified the cacophony of my thoughts. After what seemed like an eternity, I surrendered. The stillness enveloped me, suffocating in its intensity. I felt an urgent need to rise, to engage in some activity that would dispel the restless energy coursing through me as I slipped out of bed. I crept silently along the corridor, the gentle radiance of the moonlight cascading through the windows. Shadows stretched and swayed along the walls, leaving me uncertain of my destination. Yet my feet appeared to dance as if guided by an unseen force. Guiding me to Kyle's room, the door stood slightly open, allowing a soft glow from a lamp to spill into the hallway. I paused for a moment, caught in the gentle light. My heart raced within my chest as I wrestled with the decision to knock. Yet, before I could come to a conclusion, his voice reached me, gentle and soft. Somewhat reluctant. "Feel free to enter," he uttered. His tone was calm, yet an undercurrent of uncertainty lingered as he swallowed hard. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Kyle was perched on the edge of his bed. His hands rested gently in his lap. His hair had a charming disarray. The subtle shadows beneath his eyes hinted at a restless night, a lack of sleep that lingered in his gaze. In any case, I observed that he was engaged in the same activity as when I had entered his room during my last visit. Yet on this occasion, it felt as though we were both indifferent to the unfolding events, unable to find rest. I inquired gently, resting against the door frame. He gave a slight shake of his head, presenting a modest gesture. A weary smile weighed down by the burdens of my thoughts. I suppose I gave a nod, remaining steadfastly upright. "Same here." In the blink of an eye, neither of us uttered a word. The silence enveloped us, punctuated only by the soft, steady hum of the lamp on his nightstand. The tension in the air was palpable, thick and heavy, wrapping around us like a shroud. Yet uncertainty lingered within me, questioning whether I should shatter it or if I truly desired to do so. "Contemplation has occupied my mind," Kyle said suddenly, she remarked, his voice cutting through the silence. His voice shattered the stillness, echoing your earlier words about the futility of meeting anyone's expectations. As I ventured deeper into the room, shutting the door softly as I step away. "What is there to say about it?" Kyle's gaze faltered, lingering in uncertainty, descending to those hands of his. At times, it feels almost surreal to acknowledge that I have devoted much of my existence to conforming to the expectations of others, and I find myself at a loss, unable to shield myself from the onslaught of his words crashing over me like a relentless tide. I made my way across the room to take a seat beside him. Upon the bed, Kyle spoke in a gentle whisper, resting a hand gently on his arm. "There's no need to have all the answers just yet. At this very moment." He looked up at me and said, "It's okay to take things one step at a time." Then his eyes brimmed with a blend of doubt and a profound emotion lurking beneath the surface, a moment that caused my heart to flutter. What if I am lost in the shadows of my own identity, unsure of who I truly am without all of that? He inquired. His voice was scarcely more than a whisper. I pressed my fingers softly against his arm. My emotions swirled within me as I sought the perfect words. "You remain unmistakably yourself, Kyle. Expectations do not determine your identity. You are so much more than that." Though the moment may not seem significant, Kyle's gaze held onto mine with an intensity that spoke volumes. The air between us was thick with the weight of his emotions. "You've rendered it remarkably straightforward," he uttered. His lips curved into a faint smile. A smile tinged with nostalgia. I must confess my voice has grown softer now. However, that does not imply that it is beyond reach. You possess a strength greater than you realize. Pause and reflect for a moment. The stillness enveloped the surroundings once more. Yet it was not devoid of comfort. The warmth of his presence enveloped me, a comforting embrace that lingered in the air. The delicate murmur of the lamp envelopes the room in a warm, inviting light. The rest of the world seemed to dissolve into nothingness. Only the two of us remain in this shared moment. "Thank you very much, Kyle." At last it was uttered. His voice remained steady, yet it carried an undercurrent of deep emotion. "No need for gratitude," I responded, my voice gentle and soft. Yet, even as the tension began to dissipate, the intensity of his gaze held mine captive, and I felt my heart quicken in a fervent reply. An unvoiced connection lingered in the air between us, a matter neither of us seemed prepared to face. Adjusting subtly, his hand grazed mine as he shifted, a subtle dance of breath and movement, nearly by chance. Yet it coursed a chill through my very being. My breath hitches in my throat. "I'm uncertain. What would I do without you?" he remarked. Silently, his eyes fell to our intertwined fingers. As they lay there, side by side, in a state of newfound rest, the question of what might have been will forever remain unanswered. I responded. My voice quivered ever so slightly. Kyle raised his gaze to meet mine. His eyes searched mine for something I couldn't quite grasp, and the room felt impossibly still. The air surrounding us crackled with a tension that was as thrilling as it was daunting. In that instant, I realized that everything between us had irrevocably changed. Kyle's gaze locked onto mine, unwavering and probing. The intensity of his gaze enveloped me, sending my heart racing in response, resonating through every fiber of my being. Every pulse resonated with urgency. The sound reverberated in my ears as the moment lingered between us. I ought to have averted my gaze. I ought to have uttered something to dissolve the tension and restore the easy familiarity that had always defined our connection. Yet I found myself paralyzed, unable to move. Ensnared by the fervor of his gaze, and the raw vulnerability and longing that flickered within, Kyle shifted ever so slightly. His hand brushed against mine once more, and this time neither of us withdrew. The connection was charged with electricity, a sudden surge that coursed through me, igniting a chill along my spine and leaving my skin alive with sensation. My breath hitched in my throat, and a warmth surged in my chest that I couldn't dismiss. "You've always been there for me," Kyle said softly. His voice was soft, imbued with a depth of feeling, even in moments when I was unsure of how to seek assistance. I don't believe I've ever expressed how deeply that resonates with me. His words washed over me like a mighty tide, and I swallowed hard, my throat constricted with emotion. "Kyle," I said, my voice quivering ever so slightly, "your significance in my life has never needed to be voiced. My only desire is for your happiness." His lips curved into a subtle bittersweet smile. "Happiness remains an elusive image to me." He admitted. His gaze dropped to where our hands still rested, fingers barely brushing. "Yet, I know that when I'm around I feel as though I can figure it out." The vulnerability in his voice stirred a deep ache within my chest, igniting an instinctual desire to comfort him, to assure him that everything would be all right. Yet, as I parted my lips to speak, the words eluded me. Instead, I extended my fingers, curling them softly around his hand. Kyle glanced up at me, his eyes wide and brimming with an indescribable emotion. He whispered softly, "I don't want to mess this up." "You're not going to mess anything up," came the reassuring reply. I responded, my voice soft and steady. "Now, let me assist you with what you were occupied with, Kyle." For a moment, the silence between us felt heavy and charged. With a deliberate slowness, Kyle leaned in, his movements tinged with hesitation, as if he were pausing for my signal to halt him. I did not. His lips brushed against mine with a hesitant grace, sending my heart into a delightful flutter. The kiss was soft, almost hesitant, yet it ignited a warmth within me that was impossible to overlook. My hands moved instinctively, one resting on his arm, the other cupping his face, my fingers grazing the faint stubble on his jaw. For a moment the world around us faded, There was no sound, no light, no sense of time. Only the warmth of his lips against mine, the steady thrum of my heartbeat, and the profound connection that enveloped us. When we finally parted, our foreheads touching, a rush of emotion surged through me, tangled and complex. Confusion lingered, yes, and fear, but also an undeniable brightness that defied explanation. I had helped him, and I could see the enjoyment in his eyes, yet a thread of regret wove through my thoughts, whispering his name, Kyle. I began, my voice barely above a whisper. This is what I know, he said quickly, his voice trembling slightly. I know it's complicated, I just needed you to know how I feel. My chest tightened at his and I exhaled shakily, my hand still resting against his arms. This isn't something we can take lightly, I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. I'm not, he replied, his tone earnest. I've thought about this a lot. I've tried to ignore it, to push it away, but I can't. You're the one person who makes me feel like I can be myself. His honesty was both heartbreaking and comforting, and I felt a pang of guilt for the emotions that stirred within me. This was unfamiliar territory for me, and I wasn't sure how to proceed. However, as I gazed into his eyes, it became clear to me that I couldn't overlook what was transpiring between us. I care about you, Kyle, I finally said, my voice trembling slightly. More than you probably realize, but we need to be careful. We need to think about what this means. He nodded, his gaze never leaving mine. I just don't want to lose this, whatever this is. I don't want it to go. It doesn't have to, I said softly, my hands falling to rest in my lap. But we have to take it slow, we have to be sure. Kyle nodded again, his expression a mixture of determination and vulnerability. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, he said quietly. The sincerity in his voice made my chest ache, and I offered him a small tentative smile. We'll figure it out, said my voice steady. Together with Kyle's lips curved into a faint smile, and for the first time that evening I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The tension that had filled the room seemed to ease, replaced by a quiet understanding that while things might not be simple, we would face them together. As I stood to leave, Kyle reached out, his fingers brushing against mine in a silent gesture of connection. I looked back at him, my heart swelling with a mixture of emotions I couldn't fully name, and I squeezed his hand gently before stepping out of the hallway. It felt quieter now, the weight in the air seemed to have lessened. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but as I made my way back to my room, I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't expected. Whatever came next, we would face it together. What do you think of what I did? Is it normal for a stepmother to help her stepson like that? Or is it wrong? Let me know in the comments, please. Thank you.